On to our next session. If you've read almost any story about Twitter and Elon Musk over the last few months, you've almost certainly seen or read a quote from one of our next two guests, Professor Ann Lipton of Tulane University and Professor Adam Badawi of UC Berkeley School of Law. So I will bring them out now. We thought this would be a live discussion of an ongoing case following conversations with the Chancellor and Vice Chancellor this morning. Now it's looking more like a post-mortem, but as our next guest will share, certainly plenty to discuss. So please join me in welcoming Professor Lipton and Professor Badawi.
All right, so Ann and I thought what we would do is separately drop our lists of winners, losers, and too soon to tell, and see where our lists line up and where they don't. And I can assure you that they don't always line up. So I'll tell you the first one on my list, which I think this one we probably agree on, which is the Court of Chancery and Chancellor McCormick. I think that's on your list too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Why don't you explain why?
Okay, well, I mean, we'll start with, no, you can't separate them. The overwhelming uninformed consensus before going into this case was that Elon Musk always wriggles out of any kind of regulatory penalty. And the expectation was that this would be no different. And what he ran into, the sort of brick wall, was a set of clear legal rules, an obvious demonstration that he didn't have much of a legal case, and an unwillingness to sort of, tolerate a certain degree of showmanship to get around that. And so Delaware really became this sort of symbol of, rule of law seriousness. And I saw comments, from lay people that I will avoid the profanity, but like Delaware is where you go to find out. And these are from like lay people, and so this incredible reputational enhancement of a place where the rule of law lives, even if not in other places.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. The SEC might be able to learn something from the Court of Chancery. Kind of Elon fought the law, and for once the law finally won, which was I think was nice to see. But I think this happens every so often. The Court of Chancery gets thrust into the spotlight, and it helped them do what I think they like to do. So I've heard people say they sell. Certainty is kind of something that they like to do. I don't think that's exactly right. I think what they sell is clear contract enforcement, right? If you write something in an agreement, it's going to get enforced in Chancery. And this particular agreement happened to be very, very seller-friendly and didn't offer any wriggle room. And I think the lawyers who were drafting it knew who they were dealing with and knew where it would eventually wound up. And as a consequence, Chancellor McCormick and the court, I think, finally won. And it reflected quite well, I thought, on Chancellor McCormick, too. She's very straight, kind of dealt with these litigants with equanimity, and I think it will only enhance their reputation.
Yeah, I mean, just very low drama, kind of, straight down the middle path of running the way that the case was run, so much so that when she did allow a minor zinger to fly, it really hit home for the parties and told them exactly where the line was. So,
yeah, I thought she performed very well. I thought she was perhaps a little bit indulgent of some of the discovery motions. I understand why you might be, but it reminded me of when I was a law review advisor, and I'd have to just deal with all these kind of picayune disputes, and the next law review advisor just kind of told them, solve it yourself, which she could have done. But I think with the spotlight on you, you want to know that you're kind of doing everything in the fairest way possible. Okay, so what's on your list?
I have Twitter shareholders, and particularly a particular set of arbitrageurs. I mean, it's really interesting to how you say Twitter shareholders, because on the one hand, anyone who was like index, whatever, and holding for a long time, obviously they did well. But clearly a lot of people were betting against the deal and they sold, and those people did not do well. And the thing that really struck me was when they actually had the shareholder meeting to vote on the deal. Obviously it passed overwhelmingly, but only 60% showed up, and I think 9% of that was Elon Musk. And that may very well have been because people who were otherwise eligible to vote and holding on the record date had sold, which means that the people who really benefited were the arbitrageurs who kind of stuck to the facts of the case rather than Elon Musk's reputation.
I was somewhat perplexed by the Twitter share price. I mean, at least I was saying publicly, I think this is going to close at $54.20 per share. I see a very seller-friendly agreement. I didn't put my money where my mouth was because I was commenting publicly. And
that was exactly my feeling too.
I guess. I mean, Eric Talley, another law professor who was commenting, had this big spreadsheet with these kind of flow charts trying to justify how all the different possibilities could come out there. But I didn't agree with all of his probabilities. And I think this will be something that we look at for kind of, well, how well does the market incorporate this information?
Yeah, no, I would say to Eric, I had the same feeling. Like, look, he's a finance guy, so he felt like he had to like find every branch of possibility, no matter how outlandish. And I was just like, I'm just like a lawyer, and like I see this as more likely, and that's like all I need to say.
Yeah, I agree. So the next one on my list is Wachtell Lipton and Bill Savant, who were the litigators on behalf of Twitter. I will say I was really impressed with the complaint. I thought, I think this is something that will likely be taught in legal writing classes. Those first 7 paragraphs did such a good job of laying out what the argument was. He artfully incorporated a poop emoji into a complaint. I didn't think that was possible, but I think they acquitted themselves quite well.
Yeah, and particularly there did some really, I mean, like, okay, to be fair, they had a really strong case going in. Like, it wasn't like, like they didn't have to it would have been, more impressive if they had, frankly, if Quinn Emanuel had won because they were the ones with a much weaker position. But they made some really nice strategic moves. Like, one of my personal favorites was the thing where Elon Musk filed his answer and counterclaims, and they had to be under seal because Twitter had to have a chance to redact. And Musk wanted, and Musk's team wanted to make that public with very quickly. And Wachtell made them wait the entire period of time until they had to decide on redactions so that they could file their response before Musk's own response became public, so that in the public eye you saw Wachtell's responses to Musk's complaint before you actually saw Musk's complaint. And then when Musk's complaint actually came out, Twitter hadn't redacted anything at all. Which, by the way, was another point that they were making, which was Musk actually had a line in his complaint, if this became public, it would completely devastate Twitter. So Twitter let that become public, so as though to say, we're fine with it. It's nothing. This is a nothing burger. I mean, part of that is also because if Twitter gets sold, they don't care what becomes public. But they were making a point by not redacting it that Musk had nothing, and I thought that was very effectively done.
What do you have next?
Oh, I have Bret Taylor, the chair of Twitter. I mean, there were such admiring articles written about him. I mean, obviously, I don't know him, but him is this sort of slow and steady. I refuse to get caught up in the drama. We are closing at $54.20 per share, and I'm not letting anything else distract me. But a lot of others thought that he was more likely to, at the very least, settle for some kind of knock off all the price, although I've seen different reporting as to whether that was because on Twitter's side or Musk's side. But I think that his refusing to cave to what were essentially bullying tactics of the richest man in the world, I think, won him a lot of admiration.
So I'll use, I think our first point of disagreement is I have Parag Agrawal on the list. And so I would argue he's a bigger winner than Bret Taylor because he is going to walk away with $40 million, give or take, minus some attorney's fees that it looks like he'll have to pay to actually get paid his golden parachute for less than a year of work. He will potentially go into the Shareholder Hall of Fame, right, for getting the shareholders $54.20 at a time when Twitter was, if it were trading in the open market, probably wasn't there. What's your view?
Oh, I guess, yeah, I mean, you put it, yeah, you have persuaded me. I was put him in the jury's out, we had a jury's out category, just because he's clearly going to have this dispute. I mean, for those of you who have not been following every bit of minutia about the case, Elon Musk fired the top management for cause so that they can't get their golden parachutes. My understanding, I'm not an expert in their contracts, but my understanding is, one, there is no basis to fire them for cause, and 2, they have to arbitrate their claims, which they may want to. That may actually be faster than taking it to court. So they're going to have a delay in getting their parachutes, and they're probably going to have to pay their own fees for that. So I mean, so you're right. I mean, like $40 million minus some fees is not a loss, and, you know, but he's not getting what he should have gotten, and out of spite, there's going to be some period of delay.
Yeah, as I understand it, they have to pay their own fees, but this is going to arbitration. I used to be a litigator. Some nutty stuff happens in arbitration.
So that might introduce some uncertainty too.
All right, so what else do you have?
Yeah, I don't think I have anyone else on the win list.
I had good faith commentators who strive to make this case digestible to the interested public. I'm not going to categorize myself here or there, but it was actually a really nice opportunity to. The last time I had my phone ringing from reporters this much was when I was a law clerk and my judge was on the short list for the Supreme Court, and we couldn't actually say anything. So it was, and the reporters were, by and large, really interested in listening and learning and trying to convey what was going on. And I should say, you did a great service with your prolific tweeting on this case, so much so that you got a shout out from Chancellor McCormick this morning. So it was going straight from Twitter to her clerks to her. So you had an open
I really did not expect that. Thank you.
Okay, then we get to start talking about the losers. Who do you have?
Okay, well, I'll start actually. I guess I'll just start with Tesla shareholders. I mean, it's hard to be sure exactly, but I mean, there seemed to be a complete inverse relationship between the likelihood of Musk taking over Twitter and Tesla's stock price. And I don't know exactly what's driving Tesla's stock price right this moment, but I mean, I think that, you know, aside from just the distraction of a CEO who is sort of publicly annoying many people, who always did, but now in much grander form, publicly annoying many people who would otherwise buy Tesla's use of Tesla's resources to help with Twitter. I mean, just the unforeseen effects of how this is, the way that China may pressure Twitter and Tesla and use Tesla to pressure what happens on Twitter. The fact that if Twitter changes in its function, which I think is likely to happen, he can't use it as the same advertising platform for Tesla it's always been, just in every possible respect, I think Tesla shareholders.
Yeah, I would. I probably agree with that. I would add that there's one scenario that I've heard played out is we might get solar cities all over again, right? So Tesla acquires Twitter at a discounted price, and we have another case to look forward to.
And that would really be a loss for Tesla
yes,
shareholders.
But you could tweet from your car, so that would be.
That'll be another loss for Tesla shareholders when the National Highway Transportation Association.
Yeah. I have Twitter employees. I think that's been mentioned. As someone said, every panel is a Twitter panel today. In talking, you know, a lot of people are losing their jobs or getting thrown out into a job market, which is pretty tough for tech workers.
And even the ones who remain, they are not happy. They don't know who they report to. They are, you know, I mean, I know that some, I mean, based just on the reporting, some are energized, but a lot of them are feeling like they are under pressure. They don't know what their job is. I mean, we can see it. We can see it in real time as their instructions are changing, because this is what Twitter Blue is, and this is when it's being rolled out, except no, it's being rolled out on this day, and no, it's going to be a different function. And so they must be getting different instructions inside the building. So even the ones who are there, you know, this is not good for them.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And some of them don't know which one, if they still have jobs or not. I also have the financing banks, right? So it looks like they're keeping the debt right now, which is there's a bunch of interesting questions, right? When are they going to farm it out eventually to investors? What is that going to look like in terms of what they disclose to those investors? Are we going to get some of the same issues that Elon Musk tried to point to in the syndication of, or the spinning out of this debt? I think you suggested that maybe, or at least some law professors had suggested that Elon buy it back at 50 cents on the dollar.
This is Eric Talley. Like the 12th dimensional chess. If he makes Twitter look bad enough, he can buy back the debt from the banks at 50 cents on the dollar. And if that is in fact the strategy, then, you know, kudos. But I don't think it is.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be if if Twitter goes the way of Friendster and MySpace, which is certainly possible, and then they can't make debt payments, then either Elon's going to have to go in his own pocket, or he's going to have to deal with covenant violations with these banks who are generally not very nice when those things happen. What else is on your list of losers?
I'd say Twitter users, or at least the one, most of them. I think that the changes to the service that are being proposed, I mean, as a Twitter user, I would say that the current Twitter users, now again, this is sort of gets into a bit of discussion about whether Twitter changes and how it changes, but Twitter current users anyway, this is just, these changes are just not going to be very helpful. I mean, one thing that's, as I understand, being floated somewhere between completely paywalled service or a service where, I mean, if you don't use Twitter, you don't get it, but basically where your tweets will be very hard to be seen by anyone unless you pay. That makes it a much less useful service, not just to people, even if you're willing to pay, it makes it a less useful service for you because the only tweets you'll see are those of other paying users, and maybe you want to see users who aren't necessarily willing to pay. I mean, it changes the nature of the audience. I saw businesses who are just like, right now, if I get like 1,000 likes on a tweet and everyone sees it, everyone knows it was because my business put out a good tweet. If it looks like, no, it's because my business paid to be higher in the line, then the value of that kind of attention, it goes down. So I think that the current Twitter user base is going to suffer even if the service does survive these changes.
Have you moved to Mastodon?
I am hedging at Mastodon. I have an account at Mastodon, which is a lot like Twitter, but not the same. So if Twitter finally goes out or Elon Musk bans me or something, I can still be heard.
I had Twitter users on my too soon to tell. All right, if it kind of stays as the network that everyone uses, I think it will be okay as a user experience. But I am not the Twitter power user that you are. I just read on Twitter, and I read the same 5 people. You're one of them, and that part has been unchanged. I have equity investors in Twitter, otherwise known as Elon's friends, right? So a lot of people kind of put in a little bit of money. Insofar as they're his friends, they're probably unlikely to sue him for anything that he may do. And even then, at least thus far, I don't think you were telling me you're a former plaintiff's lawyer, so it's easier for you to come up with reasons to sue him. But it's a little bit early at this point. But I'm not super sanguine about Twitter's financial prospects going forward. And you're a minority shareholder in a company that is controlled by Elon Musk. So that's not a position I would want to be in.
See, I'm just not terribly worried about Twitter's users. I mean, equity investors. I mean, I think that if the company goes down, and I would actually say it's too soon to tell whether he can't turn it around despite sort of public antics right now. But I think that they may lose their money, but I don't think they were real. For all their public statements, they were not investing to make a profit. I mean, there are people who were kicking in like $1 million. You had people like, was it Ken Langone who was kicked in $29 million? Which I mean, this is just. I'm friends with Elon Musk money. And this is, to ingratiate themselves with Elon Musk, and that was accomplished. And so David Sachs is running around and rearranging Twitter as he likes, which is apparently what he wants to do. So I think that they got something other than money out of this deal. So even if they don't actually make a profit, I think they're just fine. All right, on my losers, I'm going to go for it. It's Elon Musk. I mean, not just the actual money. Okay, so let's look at the way things look now. I can't tell whether he'll finally come up with a business model that works. I just don't know. But I mean, I think it's impossible to disagree that however you feel about Elon Musk, that he is sort of publicly screwing it up right now in terms of how he's running that company. The mistakes have been, I mean, they're going to be studied in business school classes for decades because normally you don't get this much insight into bad brainstorming about a company that you know very little about. I mean, they fired people, realized that they knew the key stuff, and are now trying to hire them back. I mean, this is just ludicrous. They've changed what Twitter Blue is constantly. They said they made people sleep on the floor so they could roll it out on Monday. Then they realized that it was going to enable fraud, so okay, we'll roll it out on Wednesday. Let me try this again. They realized it would enable fraud, so roll it out Wednesday. Then they finally realized that if it was going to enable fraud, maybe that's a bad thing. So today, they changed it again, and now the verified people will be official people, and the paying people will be verified people. This is the new system. So, I mean, this is just silly. He's having another emergency call with advertisers to say, no, he's not a crazy person. And that's tomorrow. So, so he's obviously right, which means that he's sort of publicly, beclowning himself. And that may change, but it is how things look right now. So that's really just denting his reputation, and that, puts aside the amount of money that he loses. But let's say he finally does turn it around, and let's say he does not lose his money, and he actually does make Twitter into something profitable, and maybe he can. I really don't know. But I do know that he can't do three things at once, which is make it profitable, make it basically the same thing he always was, and continue to use it the way he always has. Those three things are incompatible. And that means he's losing this, what was, at least a fairly obvious emotional outlet for him, no matter what happens. He's lost his only friend. And so, so in that sense, emotionally, it's a loss for Musk.
So I had him on too soon to tell. And it really depends what is he trying to maximize, right? He may be loving life right now because he likes chaos, and he's getting as much as he wants, and he can generate as much as he wants. And if he doesn't care about, I agree, you can't get chaos and money from Twitter. But at least what I observed from the outside, he might be just having a rollicking good time.
But he's not. I mean, that's the thing. I think from the outside that doesn't look like, because if he were willing to say, I will just make Twitter chaos, but also and lose money on it, but have a good time, that would be understandable. I mean, like, that would be what we all thought. I'm spending $44 billion for fun on a game, and I can spend $44 billion on a game if I want to. But he's obviously very concerned about the finances. I mean, this is why he's having the emergency call with the advertisers again. This is why he's tweeting threats to the advertisers. This is not a guy who's like, I'll lose money, whatever, I'm having fun doing it. That's not the attitude.
It's possible. I think I'm not sure he has a coherent narrative of what he wants in his head. I think he's got the, not just the angel and the devil, there's probably a couple other people up there too. Okay, who else do you have on your...
On the loser list?
On the loser list.
Well, my final one is society. So like, leaving aside, I guess, there are people who have different views on Twitter, but Twitter had a lot of really important uses that appear to be destroyed now. So, like, as a source of news, Bloomberg actually just apparently informed its reporters that, like, not to rely on Twitter as a source of news anymore because it was no longer reliable. People in repressive countries who were using Twitter as a way of protest.
Can I just, that might not be a bad thing. Yeah. If I have to read another article that is just made up of tweets as journalistic research, that might not be the worst thing.
I got a lot of news from Twitter, so I'm hoping that those reporters and those news organizations move to Mastodon. People in countries where they would, tweet against repressive governments, all those kinds of activist movement. I mean, the thing about Twitter that was like the great leveler in a way, like, obviously if you were a big celebrity, you had a lot of followers. But at the end of the day, there was a straight up, if you had a good tweet, that would get you a terrific amount of attention. And that meant that there was a real chance for, like, just ordinary people to suddenly become famous for good or for, ill. I'm not saying that it was always used well, but it meant a truth to power. It's like the reason we saw what was happening at Black Lives Matter protests. Those things were because of Twitter. Now, TikTok might be, the alternative in that sense, if it doesn't get banned in the United States or whatever's going to happen there. But that value, that that Twitter has, appears to be being lost, at least in terms of between people distrusting the platform and the changes that he's planning.
So I'll say two things. One will be pushback, and another will be that how important is Twitter, in my view, is determined by how much you use Twitter. It's been my experience is that Twitter users believe that Twitter is incredibly important, and I'm not a power user, so I might moderate it there. But I would also push back. It's not clear that we've lost those things yet, right? I mean, it's certainly possible. I think we can all see those paths, but I think a lot of those things that you just said are, at least as of today, are probably still possible.
They could be, but not at least under the plans that he's announced. So, like, you know, if he's going to make it into a paid subscription service, that is not a place where, you know, you're going to see average everyday people being able to speak directly to people. But
that's just for verification, right? I mean,
no,
other people would be able.
He's going to push them because well, first of all, he apparently has floated a pure paywalled service. But even if he doesn't do that, at least now the proposal is that you get, if you are not paying, you are pushed down in the algorithm so no one can see you, which means you can reply to a public person and say something really important, the kind of thing that otherwise would have gone viral, except it doesn't because no one sees it.
Do you think that's actually feasible?
It's happening right now. I mean, people who read Twitter through the algorithm, I don't. If you have to, you can choose to read tweets in the order they were posted. That's what I do. Or you can choose to read it in the order that the algorithm recommends. And that, you know, goes to some extent by your tastes and popularity of certain subjects. And right now, people who read it algorithmically are already reporting that their feed is filled with stuff that they don't want to see, and they can't find the things they want to find.
That could, I mean, that is something that could be tweaked. So I guess I'm a little. That's why I'm still in the too soon to tell on that. But the sky may fall at some point. Do you have any too soon to tells?
Well, it was only how the top management would fare, given that they have to have these arbitration things over there.
I have some more losers. And this is perhaps too much inside baseball, but commentators who are needlessly contrarian and should know better. I don't know what part of it is just the people in our industry. There will always be someone that will take the opposite side of the ball. They will write editorials on these things because I guess they gain attention. They work algorithmically, right? You get attention in these things, but I will admit to some frustration that they come out of the woodwork sometimes. No, I'm not naming names. All right. Do you have? Did we miss any of your losers or winners?
What?
Did we miss any of your losers or
No,
winners?
we didn't. I have a sort of a takeaway, but I'm waiting until everything.
I think we can take it away.
Well, no. One of the things that I sort of keep noodling about in my head, and you know, once again, if you've seen some of my commentary on it, you've seen me say this in various forms before, but the ordinary people who were watching this unfold, like the non-lawyers, they were watching this, and the question that was repeatedly asked was like when Twitter was first, you know, fighting Elon Musk and filing a lawsuit and all of that, was why is Twitter doing this? What does Twitter want? And the answer, of course, was $54.20 per share. They're not being coy. There's an answer. But people found that absolutely baffling because the idea that a company would want to be bought by somebody who doesn't want it seemed just absolutely incomprehensible. Because they were treating Twitter as the way, as a natural person, you think of Twitter, which is a collection of people and stakeholder interests and stakeholder capitalism. But that is not where the law actually is. Twitter is a representation of its shareholders, and that is its only purpose, and so for legal purposes. And so, the lay understanding, as it switched from why would a company want to be bought by someone who was going to destroy it? And it wasn't like Musk's management intentions were, you know, opaque either. We knew exactly what he was planning to do. Why would a company want that? And the switch to, no, they want that because the shareholders want it. It was really fascinating to watch that public understanding change because when you obviously we debate stakeholder capitalism all the time. It's not like we corporate law professors are unaware of it. But to actually watch how it played out, even among cynics who otherwise would have said, oh, shareholder primacy is destroying the world, but to watch them have the realization of what shareholder primacy means in this context. And what it meant in this context was taking an incredibly socially valuable, geopolitically important company and very possibly raising it to the ground for shareholder primacy. As the takeaway, as the world watched, I was talking to reporters and they were just baffled that this could possibly be the law. And I'm like, and yet. I don't know exactly where we go from here or if there's any change from here. But just the public understanding of how, when you think about it from a normal person, that's insane. Like, that you're going to take this incredibly socially valuable, important company and destroy it on this because of a contract and all of the people who have an interest in this company have literally no role to play and no legal standing to object. That's a crazy system. That's a wild system. And you can ask questions then about, like, how do you make that not happen? Because that shouldn't happen. It shouldn't work that way.
So I'll try and end on a slightly more uplifting note. I'll bracket the shareholder wealth maximization. So this may be the case for you too, but my colleagues who study constitutional law and administrative law, granted, I'm at Berkeley, think the sky is falling, right? In terms of kind of rule of law, kind of the rules don't apply. And what I reply to them and the other folks who express these concerns are, I do real law, right? That's what we do, right? There is actual law that we do where the rules matter. So this is, that has been something to take away from this, is that rule of law exists in business law in Delaware, and we see it kind of fading away or being chipped at in a lot of areas. And so for me, that was uplifting. Now, the question is, what are the rules? What should be the rules? And if it's shareholder wealth maximization is the rule, and this puts this into focus and makes people really think about it, then that could also potentially be a good thing.
But this is the thing, because this is exactly what I've been playing with, that yes, the rule of law held in this case, but it held because it was only shareholder wealth maximization. Because the reason we knew that Delaware was going to rule in a certain way, the reason we had that kind of certainty, the reason that Musk couldn't confuse Chancellor McCormick the way he's confused other regulators and so forth. The reason that happened was because all the other political concerns of society were abstracted out of the equation. They just didn't exist. We reduced it to just this one simple question, and that made the rule very simple. So yeah, the rule of law held, but only because we took out all the things that make law complicated.
Yes. Well, we've hit the limits of our time. Thank you. Right.
Thank you, professors. If I make a list of winners from this conference, the two of you will be on it. That was a lot of fun. We'll begin our next session in just a moment.